Hello, friends, family, and random internet weirdos who found this video. Welcome to another video of our trip to Vegas and then on to Mexico City. This one is pretty exciting. There's going to be a ton of history, and I mean like 2,000-year-old history involved. But I have to stress the extreme, while there's the extreme beauty in the nature during this hot air balloon ride specifically, and the amazing historical and important cultural value of the pyramids themselves, there is very visible the extreme poverty of the area directly surrounding those pyramids. And it is kind of sad to see the houses, some of them don't even have glass in the windows anymore. Some whole roof sections have collapsed, and it's very sad to see. And so I like to keep in mind how privileged I am to be able to do this sort of thing, and to take that to heart and realize that maybe I need to be a better person because of it and help out where I can. So if you go on a trip to Mexico, I suggest heavy tipping. Even a heavy tip is going to be like $2. Literally $2 is a big tip to them. So if you give that, people are incredibly grateful for it. So here you see the city, the little town, as we fly over it. There are about 4 towns, I believe. There's San Martin, San Francisco, and I can't remember the other ones that they told us that are directly around the pyramids. Now, these pyramids that you're about to see were built in the year 100. That one right there, that's the Temple of the Sun, 100 CE. That is over 1,900 years ago. And the second temple, that one right there, the Temple of the Moon, was built in 250 CE. But the original building that happened in that area, or where the temples became, actually started in the year 100 BCE. So 2,100 years ago. Now, the people that lived there disappeared, whether it was migration or it was disease, they're not sure. People have different opinions of why they left. And then the Aztecs came in about the year 1400. And so they came and they were like, holy cow, look at these giant buildings. And they had already fallen into severe disrepair. There was lots of buildings that had been burned down for whatever reason in there. Historical records are obviously not something that was very important to the Teotihuacan people. They didn't have an exact written language. What we understand from their day-to-day life is based on murals, the tools, the living arrangements by things that they left behind. So here's a great view down to the Temple of the Moon. Now, the Temple of the Moon was female. The Temple of the Sun is male. And they're not actually technically pyramids. People will call them pyramids. Even the town of San Martin is San Martin de las Piramides, which means Saint Martin of the Pyramids. But they're not pyramids because of the fact they don't come to a point at the top, and they are not hollow. You can't get inside of them. They are flat on top, and that's where they would do human sacrifices, unfortunately. And they're in 4 levels, and the reason they're like that is because each one is representative of a level for a different god. They had 4 main gods that they worshipped, the Teotihuacan people. And you would leave the most important offering at the top, which would be a person, and they represented also the seasons. So winter, spring, summer, and fall were represented by each level, and all of the crumbling ruins that you see were marketplaces. They were buildings where people would live, apartments, essentially. Trading spots, all sorts of things that you would need in a city. It was literally the biggest metropolis for about 1,000 years in North America. And it was just gigantic. And people would come from all over the continent to trade there because they had such a large amount of obsidian. It made them incredibly wealthy. It's what attracted the Aztec people when they moved in and they found it too. They absolutely loved it. It made them a ton of money. Their empire flourished because of it, and this became a sacred place. And the name Teotihuacan actually means, in the Aztec language, which I'm not going to try and pronounce, it means where men became gods, or the place of the gods. So this was incredibly important to the Aztec people. And they also would use those same pyramids, or I believe they were called cistas, is what our tour guide, Jimena, called them when she told us that they're not technically pyramids. They would use them also for human sacrifice. And the fact that the Spaniards and the people who came from Europe said that they weren't civilized is pretty galling almost, because of the fact that the laws that the Aztec had regarding the working of a family, you could not commit a crime against a family was a crime against the state. So it'd be like a felony. Even adultery was considered a felony. And if you were higher up, you were punished even more severe. So if you were a judge, because they did have judges, the Aztec, and you, say, took a bribe and let someone off who was guilty, you were executed. You'd either be a sacrifice, or they might stone you in the town center. They might even, unfortunately, burn you alive, which would be horrible. But they were very serious about their laws and their regulations. There's a little house that has a weird giant cage. We weren't sure what was there, if it was like monkeys or lions that they were keeping in their tigers, something big that was in their backyard. In a little bit, we're going to see the video that they made using the drone. That, if you noticed in some of the shots, there was a drone flying around. They took some pictures before we began on their camera. I didn't include any of those. It's me and the wife. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, but the drone video that they made is really cool. Here we're about to land, and this is how they get the balloon down. They open up that part at the top that you can see through now, and it lets the hot air just go out. I couldn't film the landing because I didn't know how you landed in a hot air balloon, but everyone besides the two captains had to get down and put their backs against the back side, so the side that would land first. And then a bunch of guys just ran up. It takes about 12 people to get you down, and then they kind of lifted us up a little bit and got us over onto that trailer there. Then they gave us some wine. It was an exotic berry wine. It was pretty good. I'm pretty sure the alcohol content was pretty low, and he said a little cheer for it. That is apparently traditional, and these guys landed right over our head. I mean, they just came in, and I thought they were going to clip us. This is the film from the drone. They obviously have this already set up. I don't know, actually they might have filmed that today, but I think that part was from a different day. So we had to wake up, just so you know, you have to wake up really early. If you are in Mexico City, we're in the area called Centro. They picked us up at 4:40 in the morning, and there was some miscommunication, so our alarm, I had it originally set for 3:30 because I wasn't getting communication until very late, but we were able to set it for 4 a.m. And they have a driver pick you up who drives you about an hour to their location. You're there for maybe 20 minutes or so while they get things ready. They drive you out to the hot air balloons where they're getting ready to take off. And literally, as you saw in the videos and as you can see here, there's just a ton of them. I didn't even bother trying to count them all. If someone wants to go back, in one of the shots I did a really long wide shot where I panned around all of them. The only balloon you don't see is obviously the one we're in, and there was one off to our left. So if someone wants to go back and count them, tell us how many balloons were in the sky, that'd be crazy. I think I know who would do it, but it was impressive to see them all. They were all different designs. This one they called Athena, so after the goddess Athena. Also, the van we rode back in on was called Athena as well, so we got Athena twice, which is pretty cool. And if you're wondering how to book this, if you go to Viator and put in hot air balloon Mexico, hot air balloon, Teotihuacan. You'll get a bunch of options. This one will say hot air balloon, pyramid, Teotihuacan, and breakfast in cave. And it is operated by Viaja Teotihuacan. I'll put that in the description down below. But now we are going to move into the cave. This is La Cueva, and it has been a restaurant for over 100 years. It's in a natural cave that they used to store grain originally. And they give you a nice traditional breakfast, some light fruit with yogurt and granola, and then we had chilaquiles, we had tea, and the Mexican coffee. That was so good. We ordered an alcoholic drink, a fruit smoothie with some alcohol. It was heavy on the alcohol, like a lot of the drinks that you'll get when you go down to Mexico. People pour kind of heavy down there, but it was delicious. They also had dessert offerings. So our specific plan included the breakfast. We just paid extra for the drink, which you'll see in a second. And that way we could add on a tip with our credit card, but you can also do cash because the tip is not included. This is a cave right next to the restaurant. And that right there where you saw for just a second was Jimena. They stored all sorts of things here. Food for a few days, it would stay cold. And there are actually several of these caves that are connected. And you could actually go from here to the pyramids underground. And when the Spanish were invading and taking the gold and killing people and taking people back to Spain, they would use the caves and the fact that you can get from one entrance to another entrance and get out as a way of escaping. And they would hide gold inside the nooks and crannies. And she said that not too long ago, maybe a couple months, a family actually found some gold. Obviously, they didn't get to keep it because this is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So that went to a museum. And when you see the actual pyramids and the structures around, you're going to think, wow, that's really big. But in reality, because of the caves, they haven't even done 95%, or haven't even done 5%. So what you're seeing there is the maguey plant, which was very important. You could make paper out of it. You could make fiber, tools. You would get your alcohol from there. You would get your water from there. That was a piece of obsidian. Like I said, obsidian, all of that stuff that you saw right there was obsidian. You can actually see through it when you hold it up to the sun, and it's how they studied the sun and were able to devise their calendars and calculate things. And they used it in measuring and telling time so that the pyramid of the sun is perfectly lined up during the spring equinox with the sun. So it's very impressive. All the things they were able to do to create these tools with the obsidian and the things they did with it was amazing. And the maguey plant, which is kind of a type of agave, which is also related to asparagus, by the way, just a fun fact. The stuff you can do with it, you get, he said, I think on one leaf, you could get 2 meters of paper. 2 meters. And just so you know, these steps that I took a picture of right there are incredibly steep. You literally cannot run up them, and you most definitely cannot run down them because you will just fall and hit your face. There's a still remaining mural. Very impressive to see something that's, over 1,000 years old on the wall. The paint's still there and existing. Fantastic. They also, the reason they found out that those plants had alcohol was because when they moved them, the next day it wasn't regular drinking. You weren't regularly able to drink it without getting intoxicated, which they didn't know what intoxication was exactly, so they thought they were getting closer to the gods and they were getting messages. Here we've moved on to Chapultepec, which means the cricket hill or grasshopper hill. It is the palace, and it was made originally in 1785, I believe, for the Spaniards there. It's a royal house, and it is one of 2 royal palaces in North America. The other is also in Mexico City, but this is the only castle in North America. There are like fake castles, but this is the only real castle, and it's up on a big hill. You can see all of Mexico City. The history of the revolution is really thick here. There's signs to remember the importance, the things that were fought for, the lives that were lost to secure freedom for people. So it's a pretty solemn place, and it's just amazing to see the opulence because Emperor Maximilian, he was actually a Habsburg. So, the inbred rulers with the big chins, he was one of them. And his wife, Carlotta or Charlotte, they ruled from here together. Eventually, it became a place to train troops where the presidents lived. The viceroy lived there as well. Until the 1930s, when the president at that time opened it up to the public and it became a museum. It's only 100 pesos to get in, and from here, from that viewpoint, you'll see it in a second. I took another picture, zoomed in. There's the statue of the Angel in the Reformation Avenue, I believe is what it's called, and it's a huge, huge statue up on a pillar. We drove kind of close to it, but I would definitely recommend going up to it. It's a fountain, very cool. We unfortunately were moving in traffic pretty quickly during the time of day that we came by, so we weren't able to take a picture. Just a second ago, it showed an elevator that the President Diaz, who was kicked out during the revolution and had to go live in Europe, he had put in, he was trying to modernize the country, and he put in 2 different elevators. One was hydraulic and the other was electric, I believe is what it said. Trying to translate some of these signs were translated, and then others I had to use my broken Spanish to try and figure out. But it is very impressive, and every now and then we'd hear a tour guide who was speaking English. That bathroom, I was surprised how big it was. Now these 5 stained glass represent different Greek gods, goddesses I should say, and they were really well done. I would imagine if you broke one of those, it'd be breaking a national treasure. It'd be horrible. This is a garden on top of the castle, and there's actually a bathroom up there. So if you have to use the bathroom and you're in Mexico City and you're going to this castle, I suggest waiting so that you can tell all your friends that you went to the bathroom at a castle. There's a lot of old clocks in this room, and at the very end of it is a gift from Tsar Nicholas to Emperor Maximilian. Right there, a jade door, and it would be incredibly heavy, and it was ornate, inlaid with gold. Here's some of the pictures of the guys, kind of nobility at that time. Kind of crazy looking, but do yourself a favor, go check out Chapultepec.